He's not full of faith anymore. He's not full of faith that the battle is the Lord's. It's too late for the Lord to deliver. That's what he's thinking. It's the Cling Life Show with Kim Cash Tate. Welcome to Season 1. It's not too late. Hello and welcome to the Cling Life Show. I am your host, Kim Cash Tate, and this is Season 1, Episode 7 with our theme, It's Not Too Late. And this is the final episode of this season. So who did I say for last? David. When you have to wait on the Lord, when it looks like a promise will not be fulfilled, turn to David and be encouraged as you read his story of how long he had to wait. But God was faithful. David's story starts in 1 Samuel chapter 16. The backdrop is this was right after the period of the time when the judges ruled. Now they have their first king, King Saul. But Saul had some issues with disobedience and rebellion, and so God has rejected him as king. The prophet Samuel said this to King Saul in 1 Samuel 15:28. The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to your neighbor who is better than you. And this wasn't the first time Samuel had a word like this for Saul. In 1 Samuel 13 and 14, it says this. Samuel said to Saul, "You have acted foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not endure. The Lord has sought out for himself a man after his own heart, and the Lord has appointed him as ruler over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you." Who was the man after God's heart? Samuel didn't even know at the time. It was the shepherd boy, David. Let's look at chapter 16. I'm starting at verse 1. I'm reading from the NASB. Now the Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have selected a king for myself among his sons." But Samuel said, "How can I go? When Saul hears of it, he will kill me." And the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord." This tells us a lot about Saul. Samuel knows he will kill me if he finds out. Saul was rejected as king, but he is still very much in that office, and he has no intention of letting it go. I also want to note that Samuel was sent to Jesse. Jesse is the son of Obed, which we saw in the last episode was born to Ruth. "You shall invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you shall do. And you shall anoint for me the one whom I designate to you." So Samuel did what the Lord said and came to Bethlehem. And the elders of the city came trembling to meet him and said, "Do you come in peace?" He said, "In peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." He also consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they entered, he looked at Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before him." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God sees not as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel, and he said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Next, Jesse made Shammah pass by, and he said, the Lord has not chosen this one either." Thus Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen these." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Are these all the children?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest, and behold, he is tending the sheep." Then Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him, for we will not sit down until he comes here." So he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy with beautiful eyes and a handsome appearance. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon David from that day forward. And Samuel arose and went to Ramah. So what a triumphant moment. David walks in. God says, "That is him. Arise, anoint him." Samuel takes the oil, anoints him in front of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord comes mightily upon David. If we didn't know anything about this story, we would think that David becomes king right after this. No. Right after this will be a long wait. But the thing is, David himself might have thought that he was on a fast track to the throne. And for a while, it's looking good for David in that regard. The next verse says this: "Now the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord terrorized him." When Saul was anointed king, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, just as it did upon David just now. But now for Saul, the Spirit has departed. So for the rest of this chapter, what we see is Saul is made aware of David having this anointing to play the harp. And whenever he plays the harp, it soothes Saul and the evil spirit departs. So God has set it up to where David is in the king's court, attending to the king, finding favor with the king. The next chapter, chapter 17, is David and Goliath. The giant Goliath, a Philistine, comes out every day challenging Israel's army, saying, "Choose someone to fight me." 17:24 says, "When all the men of Israel saw the man, they fled from him and were greatly afraid." David comes to bring lunch for his brothers who are in the army, and he's like, "What's going on?" When he finds out, he says this to King Saul, verse 32, "Let no man's heart fail on account of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." Remember, the Spirit of God is mightily upon him. David takes his sling and his 5 stones and he approaches the giant, telling him what the Lord is about to do to him. And he says, "The battle is the Lord's." He is full of faith, and the Lord does fight for him. He strikes the giant on the forehead with that single stone, and the giant falls dead. David now becomes known as the premier warrior. The women are singing, "Saul has slain his thousands, David his 10,000s." Now Saul is jealous and angry. The next time David is playing the harp for him, it does not soothe him. Saul takes his spear and hurls it at David, trying to pin him to the wall. David had to escape. David has become his enemy, and he starts hunting David to kill him. David is on the run, hiding in caves, living in the wilderness. Lots of different estimates as to how long David was on the run from Saul. I've seen 4 years, 15 years, 22 years. Whatever it was a lot. And it has been a long time since that anointing by the prophet Samuel. Samuel's not even alive anymore, but Saul is alive and well, and he is utilizing everything at his disposal to kill David. As any of us could imagine, David grows weary and discouraged. 1 Samuel 27:1. Then David said to himself, "Now I will perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than to escape into the land of the Philistines. Saul then will despair of searching for me any more in all the territory of Israel, and I will escape from his hand." We can just hear the weariness in his thoughts. We can hear, it's too late for whatever I thought God was going to do. Here's my only choice. There's nothing better for me than to live in the land of the Philistines, the long-standing enemy of Israel. This is how you became known as a warrior, fighting the Philistines and the giant Goliath. Now they are your refuge. This is all I've got. There's nothing better for me. He said, I will perish one day by the hand of Saul. He's not full of faith anymore. He's not full of faith that the battle is the Lord's. It's too late for the Lord to deliver. That's what he's thinking. He takes the men who are with him and their families, and they set up homes in Ziklag, a location given to him by the Philistine king. And they lived there for more than a year. Then the day comes when the Philistines are going to war against Israel again, and the Philistine king tells David to come to war with him. David agrees to go to war with the Philistines against his own people, the people over whom he's been anointed king. But this is where he is now. This is all he has. And he's going to prove himself to this Philistine king. He's marching to war on his way to the battle. But it wasn't too late for God to deliver. First, he blocked David's path and redirected him from the battle. David doesn't even make it to the battle. Some Philistine commanders come up and start arguing with the Philistine king like, are you serious right now? You're bringing him to war with us. They know who David is. They're like, he can turn on us in the battle and fight for his own people. The Philistine king has to tell David and his men that they have to return. This was the very battle in which Saul was killed. The waiting was over. This was the appointed time. And David almost messed up his appointed time. If David had been in that battle fighting his own people, they would not have wanted to seat him on the throne. But God is sovereign. David could not mess up his appointed time. Habakkuk 2:3. For the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens toward the goal, and it will not fail. Though it tarries, wait for it, for it will certainly come. It will not delay. Let me read that again. Though it tarries, though it seems like it's too late, wait for it. It will certainly come. It will not delay. It will never be too late from God's perspective. It will be the appointed time. David says this in Psalm 27:14, wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for the Lord. If you've been waiting for the Lord, holding a promise from him near to your heart, struggling at times because you think it's too late, use this time to cling to him, to seek him. Use this time to purpose in your heart that nothing matters more than him. Ask him to strengthen you in the waiting, and know that when it's a word from God, it will certainly come. It will not delay. Trust him, cling to him, and know that he is faithful. I pray this series has been a blessing to you. Thanks so much for joining me on the Cling Life Show. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and a positive review would be a blessing. I will see you in the next one. Meanwhile, keep clinging.